This is how Man United outsmarted Arsenal at their own backyard. We'll look at United's offensive shape. We'll look at how United used their counter-pressing that was very aggressive to stop Arsenal from playing. And last but not least, see how some individual battles like Dogu versus Timber decided this match. So let's start by looking at Arsenal's setup when they were trying to press United. So if you look here, the players in white, like here, there is Gabriel Jesus pressing Harry Maguire. Number 2, you have the second player in Martin Odegaard pressing the goalkeeper, but his main man was to press this guy, Sandro Martinez. Next up, you then have Declan Rice, who's pressing 2 people. This is where problems started. On one hand, he's pressing Kobe Mainoo, but on the other, he's pressing Casemiro. So 2 pivots at once. Just like you can say Jesus is pressing Maguire, but at the same time, he's also, with his cover shadow, if he comes close, pressing Casemiro. We see the same thing with Zubimendi. On one hand, he's thinking about Bruno, who's here out of the shot, but on the other hand, he's thinking about here, this guy, Kobe Mainoo. Same thing with Bukayo Saka. On one hand, he's pressing Luke Shaw. On the other, he's thinking about Kobe Mainoo if he gets the ball. So this is where problems started, because what would then happen is that since Bruno is alone here, Zubimendi would then not allow that. And what he would do is he would track him in some cases, because we'll see some other cases that he didn't. And this is a lot of space. I think we can all agree. Bruno could utilize the space even if it was this big. But this huge space that they now find themselves in is just too big for Zubimendi to be running around chasing Bruno. But the other problem that United had is that, Arsenal had, is that if United decided to go long, you have a pacey Dogu, you have a pacey and powerful Boemu, you have a pacey Amad Diallo, who's also very skillful, and then you have a creative hub in Bruno Fernandes. So if the ball came long, then you'll see that United were causing serious problems for Arsenal. But what they try to do sometimes, Arsenal, is in their man-to-man marking that they did across the pitch, they would also say, Zubimendi, listen here, my boy, just stay on Casemiro, and then Saliba would step up and press Bruno. And then Saka would stay central so that there's no midfield progression, but his main problem would be Luke Shaw. The issue with this is that now at the back, you've left a 3v3. Now, Arsenal have done this against Bayern, they've done this against other teams where they leave a 3v3 because they trust that Gabriel will be very good 1v1 here with Mbeumo. They trust that this guy in Amad Diallo will also be dealt with because there's in Kapi here. And Timber is also very good at 1v1 against Dogu. But this space was a worry to them, and that is why in this first clip you see that it's actually Zubimendi who's staying on Bruno and not always Saliba who's doing that out of the fear of that happening. Now, this thing of Rice double marking was problematic because if you see Declan Rice there highlighted, you see that he's between 2 midfielders of United who don't mind, who like having space. On one hand, you have Bruno Fernandes. On the other, you have Casemiro. And then Lisandro Martinez being comfortable on the ball is able to thread that pass through, and now Rice has to jump between 2 players. And in him going to press Bruno Fernandes, he just plays a simple ball. The ball is with Casemiro. Now all of a sudden, Arsenal are defending, facing their own goal. So let's see how this thing worked in their first goal. So for starters, you see that Lisandro Martinez, you think the simplest pass is to just go wide. Does it go wide? Of course it doesn't. Instead, in his mind is like, this other pass makes more sense. He finds Dogu. But why is he finding Dogu? It's because, once again, Arsenal have not decided what they want to do. Saka is narrow, right? Because he wants to make sure the pass doesn't go here. But he's not fully committed to Dogu either, because he's also thinking about that run that is out wide. So he's kind of in this space that is not decisive. And as a result, the pass goes to Dogu. Now, when Dogu gets the ball, you see the problem that is happening now. the space. They are worried about the space that is behind their defense. That is why Saliba, instead of staying with Bruno, he's thinking about, you know what, I have to go and close that space. And in him trying to go and close that space, Bruno gets the smallest space, freedom, and then he can combine with Dogu. Dogu now gets the ball. Rice is reacting now late because this guy here, Saliba, did not press Bruno. So now Rice now has to go and try and press him. But now he vacates another space. And in him vacating that space, Bruno plays the ball into that space. And that's how Arsenal conceded the second goal. But it doesn't end there, because if you go and look at Arsenal and how they were trying to rush United, United wanted exactly that. Rush us so that we can go long. And in them going long, of course, it's Arsenal. They are good aerially. But they did not care about the first ball, really. There's Mbeumo there. He's not that tall. It changes when Sesko comes on. But if here Gabriel wins the first ball, look how many United players are committing. There is Diallo, there is Bruno coming, there is Diallo also coming, and Dogu can also move across. So when the ball is bubbling around, it ends up with Bruno Fernandes. And now that means the thing that they were trying to do, they've avoided the press from the early stages and build up, but now they have the ball away from the zone of pressure, closer to their goal, and they can play the ball. This is the second example. Once again, United are forced to go long. They do go long because there's too much pressure. Again, the ball is won by Saliba, but the ball bubbles around. Who wins the second ball? It's, of course, Man United. Now, look at the third goal, because it comes from this. The ball is played long, directly from the keeper. No one is rushing him. And then here, since it's Benjamin Sesko who is now playing, he wins the first ball. And then the second ball is won once again by Kobe Mainu. And then Bruno gets the ball. He combines few touches, and then Arsenal are stretched. And once again, as you can see, Sesko is making a run forward, which kind of forces the defenders of Arsenal. Like here, Sesko is making a forward run, which means Gabriel is thinking about the space that is behind there. Saliba is also thinking about that space. And since Diallo is behind Timber, he's also thinking about, let's not give them that space to run into. So in them trying to close that space, they then create another huge space in midfield. And Matthias Cunha there says, thank you very much. And then he scores United's third goal. Now, let's look at the defensive shape of Arsenal and how they were pressing. They were pressed, rather. The main thing that Carrick saw is that Timber becomes problematic. So Dogu stayed with him wherever he went. And you see that it doesn't matter what shape or size, where they were. He would stay with him, to a point that even if, like in this situation, Saliba gets the ball, he did not get tempted to move and press him. But instead, he stayed disciplined and he stayed central, or rather, just across Timber, to make sure that it doesn't play the ball. Saliba continues progressing the ball, and Saka tries to confuse Dogu by dropping. But once again, there's another man marking, because Shaw then follows Saka to make sure Saka does not play. This is when Timber now attacks the space. But Dogu is very much aware of that, and by the time they get to the other side, the ball is won. And of course, even if United, this is just a side note before you look at the goal, even when United were somehow penetrated, look at how big the gap is between this guy, Kobe Menu, and Sandro Martinez. But if you look a few seconds later, look at how small the distance has shrunk, because they were running, man. They had a desire to do it. But let's now look at what we're talking about with regards to how that led to that goal. So if you look here, you will see that as Arsenal are trying to play from the back, Dogu is making sure that Timber is not an option. So they play the ball around. Dogu and the rest of the midfielders of United, because they were pressing in a 4-4-2, make sure that the ball is not progressed centrally. But Dogu, much more important, he also makes sure that the ball is not progressed wide. So now Arsenal are forced to kind of play the ball back, and that's where the mistake happens. And then that's how United scored their very first goal. So it was a very smart approach by Carrick, and he's now beating Arsenal and Man City, 2 league contenders. It's crazy. How did you see this game? Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Thank you so much for watching. Go check out this video that YouTube thinks you might like. I will see you on the next one, and bye-bye.